begins with individual action for collective clean communities. Once again, you're welcome. This is Ogtv Main News. Ogun State Governor Prince Dr. Abiodun has approved increment of hazard allowance of health workers in the state by 300%. This is not unconnected with the exposure of the health workers to the risk occasioned by treatment of coronavirus patients. He stated this in a meeting with the leadership of the health workers' unions across the state. Governor Abiodun also expressed appreciation to health workers, describing their job as very massive and sacrificial. More details of this report will come in our subsequent bulletins. The Ogun State government has extended by another week the current modified lockdown to prevent the spread of coronavirus in the state. This will, however, be reviewed on a weekly basis. Governor Dr. Abiodun will disclose this while addressing the press on the update of the COVID-19 pandemic in the state. Also said the regular 3 days, hours, and the usual guidelines remain. Governor's Office correspondent Tunde Olaniro reports.
In the last 1 week, the number of confirmed cases in Nigeria State has risen to more than double. As of Thursday, 7th May 2020, we had 100 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Ogun State. 20 of them have since been discharged to rejoin their respective families and restart normal life. Unfortunately, we recorded a total of 2 deaths. This leaves us with 78 active cases who are currently receiving efficient treatment at our treatment centers.
The governor reassures the people of the state that there is no reason to panic.
As usual, it's a prayer that all this will soon be discharged in due course. Once again, I want to reassure our people that there's no reason to panic. As your government, we will continue to do what is right, what is fair, and what is proper for all the people of our dear state. We have continued to ensure that we increase our pace and widen the coverage of our testing process. As of today, we have screened over 10,000 people and tested over 700. In addition to that, we have intensified our contact tracing capacity. I have traced over 551 contacts of COVID-19 positive patients. We are doing this to detect and treat people who are already infected rather than leaving them undetected, which will be more detrimental because this will increase community transmission.
He says the fate of the state is in the hand of the people.
You, the entire people of this state, have not elected me to make easy decisions. And tough decisions we have to make. Now, to preserve the lives of our people, we are persuaded to extend the current modified lockdown, which has been slightly eased anyway, for at least another week, alongside the current guidelines. These will continue to review on a week-by-week basis. To remind you, our windows of relaxation will continue to be available on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The daily curfew and ban on non-essential interstate travel as directed by Mr. President still stands. The curfew starts at 8 p.m. Wearing a face mask is mandatory. It is important to note that we have provided and continue to provide face masks to public servants, many interest groups and associations. However, government alone cannot provide face masks to all. Individuals that have a need to go out and have personal responsibility to procure and use face masks in public, as the enforcement will continue to be strengthened with the full weight of the law to violators. All other physical distancing measures as announced last week remain in force.
The COVID-19 enforcement task force to the 3 senatorial districts and 20 local government areas of the state has been strengthened across the state. Prince Dr. Abiodun says everything humanly possible will be done to ensure that COVID-19 will not spread further across the state. Tunde Olaniro, Ogtv News.
The government of Ogun State has distributed face masks, soaps and sanitizers and hand gloves to all market men and women in the state in a bid to help flatten the curve of the spread of the COVID-19 in the state. The Commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development, Funmilayo Fakpe, who distributed the materials, stressed that the current administration has succeeded in creating a balance between socio-economic activities and the health of the citizens. Governor's Office correspondent Tunde Olaniro reports that Mrs. Efakwe called for enforcement of social distancing in the marketplaces, stating that the faulted marketplaces will be shut. His report.
Contain the spread of COVID-19 in Ogun State, the state government empowered traders with materials such as hand washing points, soaps, hand sanitizers, hand gloves, among others. The marketplaces visited are Lafenwa, Adaton, Kuto, Shion, as well as Falao markets in Shagamu.
Àjọṣewọ̀ ní ìdìbàjẹ́ lágbára Ọlọ́run ní kú sọ́nà bí èyí wọ́n ti wá ń da kò dáwọ́ kò ní jẹ́ tiwọn wọ́n ń jíṣẹ́ Ọlọ́run Elédùmarè á lọ́rọ̀ ẹ̀mí wọn ẹ̀yin tẹ́ tó wà lábẹ́ wọn náà ẹ̀ ní pàdé àgbákò ẹ lọ kó ẹ lọ Ìbàdàn ẹ lọ mi mọ́tò yóò ní kó sábẹ́ tírélà ó máa dáa fún yín ni ìyá lọ́jà wa tiẹ̀ náà dáa o bó ṣe ń gbọ́ ọ̀tún tó ń gbòsì pé kó wá bàjẹ́ fẹ́ ni wọn kò ní bàjẹ́ fún ẹ ọjà Kútọ̀ yìí kò ní di gbòòrò ó gbọ́jà náà kò ní wá di gbòòrò.
Gbogbo àwọn ìyá wa gbogbo nǹkan tí bàbá wa ọmọọba Dàpọ̀ tí wọ́n fi ránṣẹ́ láìsí ní màgí ni tòmátò ní gbogbo nǹkan jíjẹ gbogbo ẹ̀ pátá ni mo fi jíṣẹ́ fún gbogbo àwọn ìyá lọ́jà látòkè délẹ̀.
Mo dẹ̀ gba aládùúrà fún Dàpọ̀ Abíọ́dún pé ìjọba ò ní dàrú ó máa ṣàṣeyọrí ó máa ṣàṣeyege torí gbogbo nǹkan tó fún àwọn èèyàn ó gbé wá fáwọn ọlọ́jà ìyàwó ẹ̀ náà fi nǹkan ránṣẹ́ sí wa mo dẹ̀ pín fún wọn délé ó dóko.
The Commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development in Ogun State, Mrs. Funmilayo Efakwe, explains the step taken by the state government.
My pass back is below average. It's only at that town market they actually, did well. They were able to make sure that 90% of the people in their market use face masks. And we try to encourage them to do the washing of hands and all that. The governor has tried. He has provided them with nose masks. He has provided them with soap and sanitizer to wash their hands. It's just for their own safety. We don't think we actually need to enforce before they will adhere to it, because it is just to make sure that every one of us is healthy, and that is why we are here.
She calls for social distancing in the markets.
By Monday, we will still go around again to make sure that all these are markets. They have to adhere strictly. If not, any market that we find defaulting, we will lock the market for at least 2 months, so that it will serve as caution to others. We are just going to use one market as scapegoat, and every other one will have to comply. They don't have a choice than to comply to this.
The Commissioner appreciated the traders, marketsmen and women for always supporting the programs and policies of the current administration in the state. Tunde Olaniro, Ogtv News.
As Ogun State prepares to enter another phase in the battle against COVID-19 through easing of the lockdown, residents of the state have been preparing ahead for the guidelines put in place by government to go through the partial lockdown. Ogtv News crew went around some major areas in the state capital to seek the people's opinion on the impact of the lockdown and whether it should be reimposed. Matthew Shomi reports.
It's been 5 weeks since Ogun State came under total lockdown, with some days observed as relaxation days to enable people restock their homes with essential items. Life is, however, about to partially return to normal as a new phase of gradual easing of the lockdown is imminent. To ensure that the battle against COVID-19 is not compromised, thereby losing the gains recorded over the past 5 weeks, some guidelines have been put in place by the government which people must comply with to flatten the curve of the pandemic.
The virus needs people for it to move from one place to the other. So for this reason, the social and physical distancing that has been identified as the major solution in combating these diseases, this virus, should also be observed at all times.
The state government has actually come out with that guideline and directive. The state government said, yes, we must not, the Okada riders must not carry more than 1 passenger. The taxi cabs must not carry more than 1 in the front and 2 at the back. And for our buses, it should be 2-2-2. Commercial buses, 2-2-2 on the seats. We must be able to enforce this. We have started the enforcement of this. And we have actually sensitized the commercial vehicles. We've gone to our various garages. We have talked to their leaders. We have talked to the leaders of the Okada riders, the Akumaran and Amoran. And I believe with the sensitization on the television, on the radio, and with what we are doing, personal contact, I believe they must heed to this.
Even the Ogun State House of Assembly is not left out in observing the necessary guidelines to prevent the spread of the virus. Our camera lens caught up with members of the State Task Force for the Prevention of the Spread of COVID-19 in adult markets, sensitizing traders on what the preparations should be ahead of the easing of the lockdown. The people of the state have also been speaking on the impact of the lockdown so far.
People will be going about their daily activities, and this is when we really need to be more careful in such a way that we do not be the carrier of this virus. We should distance ourselves as much as possible from contacting or interacting with others. And even when we get home, the clothes, the shoe, and whatever things that we come home with should be separated. For
wọ́n ṣe fẹ́ ṣí wálẹ̀ yẹn inú wa dùn. A gbà ládùúrà pé àrùn kòrónà kì í ṣàrùn Nàìjíríà. A wá bí gbà, a kúrò lórílẹ̀-èdè àgbáyé. Ohun tá ò rí tó ń lé wa, tá à ń sá fún, tá à ń bẹ̀rù. Ọlọ́run á yọ ṣọ́ wa ń bẹ̀ o.
Commandant Ogun State Soul Safe Corps, Soji Gonzalo, also speaks on preparation ahead of the easing of the lockdown.
For those that are bringing cattle into Ogun State, you see those trailers that are coming in, you still see them conveying human beings. You see them hiding under the cattle. This, we turn them back now. We don't actually allow them to disembark. We just turn that trailer back to where they are coming from. We don't want to know. If they like, they should go and drop them elsewhere, but they must not be dropped in Ogun State. So we are indeed very, very ready. All our officers are out there. The police are ready, the DSS, the civil defense. You can see that we are all working in synergy. We are all working together now during this lockdown, and I believe the synergy is actually working in Ogun State.
The battle is no doubt for everyone to follow all the necessary guidelines for the prevention of the spread of the virus. Matthew Shomi, Ogtv News.
Lagos State Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, on Friday said the state may record between 90,000 and 120,000 cases of coronavirus by July or August when it reaches the peak. Abayomi disclosed this at a news conference at the Secretariat Ikeja while giving updates on coronavirus in the state. He said the state was yet to reach the virus peak, which will likely be around July and August. Abayomi stated that Lagos has ramped testings to reach large number of people in a bid to flatten the curve. He attributed the increase in cases being recorded to the decentralization of sample collection to the 20 local governments. Abayomi disclosed that Alimosho, Oshodi, and Isolo have begun to record more COVID-19 cases. He, however, noted that 97% of positive cases at its isolation centers were mild and moderate cases. The Lagos State government has confirmed a new positive case of coronavirus in the state. In a statement on Friday, the Commissioner for Health in Enugu, Obi Ikechukwu, revealed that the case involved a 9-year-old child. He explained that the patient had contact with the 4th case reported in the state. Thus, the total number of cases ever reported in Enugu now rises to 9, with 7 active cases. The patient has been admitted into one of the isolation and treatment centers Further contacts are being identified and line listed, and necessary samples will be taken for testing, the Commissioner said. He noted that the contamination of the patient's home had been promptly carried out and urged the residents to stay at home, but only go out when absolutely necessary. The Kano State government has discharged 16 more COVID-19 patients from its isolation facilities after they tested negative twice for the virus. This was contained in a statement by the State Commissioner for Information, Malam Muhammad Garba, and issued to newsmen in Kano on Friday. The statement noted that Kano has discharged a total of 22 patients. It said among the discharged patients were Professor Abdul Razak Garba Abib of the Department of Medicine, Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, who is also the co-chairman, State Task Force on COVID-19, and the Commissioner for Health, Dr. Aminu Ibrahim Sanyewa. He advised the public to continue to observe the strictest personal hygiene through regular hand washing, use of face masks, and social distancing. In Kaduna State, the majority of COVID-19 cases have travel history, and such illegal interstate travel is widening the spread of the virus in the state, the state government has said. A statement issued from Sir Kashim Ibrahim House said that this illegal travel has increased the danger of community transmission, as infections have now been recorded in some mainly rural local government on the borders of the state. The statement, which was signed by the Special Advisor on Media and Communication, Muiwa Adikeye, said that the Standing Committee on COVID-19 appeals for the vigilance and active involvement of all citizens in the effort to avert this peril. The Special Advisor said that Kaduna State now has 82 active cases, having discharged 10 patients and recorded 1 fatality. Coming up, EFCC plans rearrangement of former Governor Orji Uzo Kalu. Join us in part 2 for more news. Welcome back. You're still watching Ogtv News. Some Nigerians who were stranded in the United Kingdom following the COVID-19 lockdown have arrived in Lagos. The airplane, British Airways 9155, touched down the Murtala Muhammad International Airport few minutes to 2 in the afternoon on Friday. The returning Nigerians will be airlifted to Abuja, where they will be quarantined for 14 days before being allowed to leave for their destinations. The process is required to ensure that the coronavirus status of every returnee is ascertained. The evacuations have become important as the pandemic continues to sweep through the world. To deal with the challenges presented by the coronavirus pandemic, the National Judicial Council, NJC, has issued new guidelines to all Nigerian courts, and they are expected to operate within that range. In a press statement signed by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Honorable Justice Tanko Muhammad, the Council encouraged the maximal usage of provided court technology solutions and enjoined the state government to provide the resources for the state judiciaries to cover the Nigerian case management system. The new NJC's guidelines was noted by the Chief Justice to have been a derivative of the report submitted by a committee headed by the Honorable Justice Olabode Rhodes-Viva. 25 GAC Salon Security Operational Vehicles have been donated to the Ogun State Security Trust Fund by Dangote Cement as part of its community social responsibility to the Ogun State government. Independent non-executive director of the company, Mr. Emmanuel Izakabo, said the gesture is a fulfillment of a promise made at the launch of Security Trust Fund by the state governor, Prince Dapo Abiodun, in 2019 towards combating crimes in the state. Peter Falomo reports.
7 months ago, precisely 6th of October 2019, the administration in Ogun State, under the leadership of Prince Dapo Abiodun, launched a security trust fund, a collaborative effort with well-meaning Nigerians and corporate organizations towards curbing nefarious activities of hoodlums to zero level. It is on this premise that Dangote Cement Company comes up to fulfill a promise made of 25 security operational vehicles to the Security Trust Fund. Independent non-executive director of the company, Mr. Emmanuel Ikazobo, who led top officials of the company to the handing over ceremony that took place at the company's headquarters in Lagos, speaks on the gesture.
We are gathered here today to hand over a total of 25 saloon cars to boost the fund. Our donation, which is to strengthen security in Ogun State, is informed by the fact that security is essential to economic development.
Mr. Ikazobo says Dangote Cement will not relent in its efforts towards supporting developmental projects of the government, both at the national and state levels, particularly in the ongoing fight against COVID-19 pandemic.
We are at the forefront of combating the COVID-19 pandemic. We have adopted several protocols such as social distancing, provision of temperature scanners, hand sanitizers, face masks and sick bays, designed to secure the health of all our staff at the cement plants.
Responding on behalf of the Ogun State government, Executive Secretary, Ogun State Security Trust Fund, Mr. Okpeyemi Agbaje, expresses appreciation to Dangote Cement for supporting the good governance of Prince Dapo Abiodun-led administration, while assuring the organization of making judicious use of the security vehicles.
This donation will go a long way in assisting us in those efforts to improve the security of lives and of citizens and of investments in Ogun State. And I really want to thank you, sir, and the entire board and management of Dangote.
Mr. Agbaje adds that such gesture from Dangote is an attestation of conducive environment for investors to thrive in all sectors of the economy in the Gateway State.
It's a sign to other investors that Ogun State is open to do business, and it is interested in ensuring that all the elements of a conducive business environment, security, and those other aspects are in place.
I hereby and I also present the fee.
Sir, this way, sir.
With these additional 25 security operational vehicles into the fleet of Ogun State Security Trust Fund, it becomes imperative that hoodlums will have no place anywhere in the Gateway State, and that investors will make the state an industrial destination of choice. From Falomo, here in the Ikoyi, Lagos State, Peter Falomo, Ogtv News.
The Supreme Court on Friday nullified the trial of a former governor of Abia State, R.J. Kalu, and others who were in December convicted and sentenced for a 7.1 billion naira fraud. Justice Muhammad Idris, who had been elevated to the Court of Appeal bench, had returned to the Federal High Court in Lagos to complete the case, which started in 2007. The judge had sentenced the ex-governor to 12 years imprisonment for the fraud he allegedly perpetrated during his tenure as Abia State governor. But in a unanimous judgment of the Supreme Court led by Justice Olabode Rhodes-Viva on Friday, the Apex Court nullified the entire trial on the grounds that the Constitution does not permit a judge elevated to a higher court to return to a lower court to conclude a part-heard case. Justice Ijembi Eko, who delivered the late judgment, also declared as unconstitutional the provision of Section 396, subsection 7 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, on which the then President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Zainab Bulkachewa, retired, relied on to authorize Justice Idris to return to the Court of Appeal to conclude the trial. The panel unanimously directed the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court to assign the case to another judge of the court for the trial to commence afresh. Kalu, who was in the December 2019 judgment sentenced to 12 years imprisonment, was convicted alongside his firm, Slok Nigeria Limited, and Jones Odiagu, who served under him as the Director of Finance and Accounts at the Abia State Government House in Umuahia. Meanwhile, former Governor of Abia State, Senator Orji Uzor Kalu, whose 12-year jail term was voided by the Supreme Court on Friday, has reacted to the verdict. In a statement issued shortly after the judgment was delivered, Kalu said his case was a story of initial injustice that was caught and ultimately corrected, a story of restoration and of how a wrong was righted and how justice and truth prevailed in the end, noting that the Nigerian Supreme Court has remained the veritable compass to the highest ideals of justice attainable in the country. He said this long tradition of the court was exemplified in today's judgment. Kalu commended the justices of the Supreme Court for their unwavering commitment to rule of law, adding that we all will stand reminded of the consistent and strategic relevance of the Nigerian Supreme Court in holding this country together, even in moments of great peril. He said he looked forward to rejoining his colleagues in the Senate as soon as possible. The chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Itsesage, SAN, has expressed his displeasure over the Supreme Court's judgment nullifying the trial of a former governor of Abia State, Orji Kalu, and others who were in December convicted and sentenced for a 7.1 billion naira fraud. Justice Muhammad Idris, who was elevated to the Court of Appeal, had returned to the Federal High Court in Lagos to complete the case, which started in 2007. The case was one of 36 pending cases in the lower court, which were completed by the judge. Justice Idris sentenced the ex-governor to 12 years imprisonment for the fraud he allegedly perpetrated during his tenure as Abia State governor. But in a unanimous judgment of the Supreme Court led by Justice Olabode Rhodes-Vivour on Friday, the Apex Court nullified the entire trial on the grounds that the Constitution does not permit a judge elevated to a higher court to return to the lower court to conclude a part-heard case. And the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says it is ready to commence the retrial of former Governor Orji Kalu immediately. The EFCC said this in a statement by its spokesman, Dele Oyewale, on Friday, while reacting to a judgment by the Supreme Court. The EFCC considers the judgment of the Apex Court as quite unfortunate, saying it is a technical ambush against the trial of the former governor. The corruption charges against former Governor Kalu still subsist because the Supreme Court did not acquit him of them. The entire prosecutorial machinery of the EFCC will be launched on a fresh trial where justice is bound to be served in due course. The Federal High Court in Lagos has forfeited to the federal government the 426.7 million naira allegedly belonging to retired Brigadier General John Onimisi Ozige. Justice Muslim Hassan made the order following a motion on notice by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission seeking final forfeiture of the sum. He agreed with the EFCC that the sum was reasonably suspected to be crime proceeds. The judge said the respondent failed to satisfy the court with concrete evidence why monies suspected to be proceeds of unlawful activities should not be forfeited to the government. It is exactly 40 years that the World Health Assembly resolution declared that the global goal of smallpox eradication had been achieved. The world's last naturally occurring case was discovered on the 26th October 1977 in Somalia. This was followed by 2 years of actively searching for cases to make certain that transmission of the virus had been stopped. On the 8th of May 1980, it was adopted that smallpox had been eradicated. Until now, nothing of such has been heard. Idowu Fabajo reports.
Smallpox is an acute contagious disease caused by the variola virus, a member of the genus orthopox virus. It was one of the world's most feared diseases until it was eradicated by a collaborative global vaccination program led by the World Health Organization. Virologists have speculated that it evolved from an African rodent probed virus 10 millennia ago. Because of the absence of an animal vector, communities had to reach a critical population before endemic smallpox could be established. The name is derived from the Latin word for spotted and refers to the raised bumps on the face and body of the patient. Early symptoms include high fever and fatigue. The virus then produces a characteristic rash, particularly on the face, hands, and leg. The resulting spots become filled with clear fluid and later pores and then form a crust, which eventually dries up and falls off. The last known natural case was in Somalia in 1977. Since then, the only known cases were caused by a laboratory accident in 1978 in Birmingham, England, which killed one person and caused a limited outbreak. Until it was wiped out, smallpox had plagued humanity for at least 3,000 years, killing 300 million people in the 28th century alone. The last known endemic case of smallpox was reported and the outbreak promptly contained in Somalia in 1977. The global eradication of smallpox was certified based on intense verification activities in countries by a commission of eminent scientists in December 1979 and subsequently endorsed by the World Health Assembly in 1980. The World Health Organization commemorated the 40th anniversary of smallpox eradication, recognizing the historic moment on 9th December 1979 when the end of smallpox was confirmed to have been eradicated. 5 months later, in May 1980, the 33rd World Health Assembly issued its official declaration that the world and all its people have won freedom from smallpox. Prior to eradication, smallpox epidemics were common in many countries, leaving death, blindness, and disfigurement behind. The eradication of this devastating infectious disease was being called one of the greatest achievements in public health. According to the Director General, WHO then, Dr. Margaret Chan, the eradication of smallpox shows that with strong mutual resolve, teamwork, and an international spirit of solidarity, ambitious global public health goals can be attained.
The multinational Joint Task Force and other coalition members, including Air Force of Operation Lafayette and the Nigerian Air Force, have neutralized about 48 Islamic State West African province ISWAP fighters and destroyed their camps. The operation, a joint air and artillery bombardment, was executed by the Air Task Force of Operation Lafayette in conjunction with Nigerian Air Force and Artillery Regiment of Sector 3 of the multinational Joint Task Force at Dumba and location Charlie on the fringes of the Lake Chad. A statement by the Chief of Military Public Information Multinational Joint Task Force, Colonel Timothy Antega, has it that the interdiction missions which set the ISWAP element and the Saray were conducted on the heels of impeccable intelligence reports from multiple sources, including allied partners. Consequently, the Air Task Force attack aircraft supported by Nigerian surveillance platform were scrambled to take out the mobile ISWAP element at the harbor location in 2 waves of bomb and rocket strikes, leading to the neutralization of several of the terrorists. Similarly, some ISWAP elements that had attacked a Nigerian army base in Niger Republic were thoroughly dealt with by NAF attack aircraft, which resulted in the killing of several terrorists, as well as the destruction of the vehicles and equipment. The multinational Joint Task Force has therefore promised to be unrelenting in their efforts to track and hunt down terrorist groups within the Lake Chad Basin. From the business world, GSM subscribers net hits 187.15 million in Nigeria. Business news segment is next. This is the business segment of the news. Nigeria's cross-border greenfield capital investment in 2019 grew by 28% to $10.2 billion, according to the latest report by Market Intelligence. The report, released on Friday, described a greenfield investment as a type of foreign direct investment where a parent company creates a subsidiary in a different country, building its operations from the ground up. In terms of the number of projects, the report said foreign companies executed 73 FDI projects in Nigeria in 2019. This ranks Nigeria among top 100 destinations for FDI projects in the Middle East and Africa. The federal government has set gas flare penalty payments by oil and gas companies in the country will increase to 103.51 billion naira this year. The Director General Budget Office of the Federation, Ben Akabweze, highlighted the revenue measures taken by the government to manage the resultant budgetary pressure from the coronavirus crisis and the oil price slump. He said the government will tighten implementation of the 2018 revised gas flare penalty payment regime, resulting in upward revision of gas flare penalty for 2020 from 44.7 billion naira to 103.51 billion naira. According to the revised payment regime for gas flaring, oil firms producing 10,000 barrels of oil or more per day will pay $2 per 1,000 standard cubic feet of gas compared to 10 naira per 1,000 standard cubic feet of gas in the past. Firms producing less than 10,000 barrels of oil per day will pay a gas flare penalty of $0.5 per 1,000 standard cubic feet. Small and medium-scale enterprises affected by COVID-19 can approach the Central Bank of Nigeria for a loan to restart their businesses, the federal government has said. The government said the CBN has set aside 150 billion naira to help SMEs and pharmaceutical companies to restart their businesses after the negative impact of COVID-19 on the economy. In the arrangement, owners of SMEs can access between 500,000 naira to 25 million naira loan through the CBN to get their businesses going. The number of subscribers to Nigeria's mobile telecommunication services rose to 187.15 million in February, according to the Nigerian Communications Commission. This is an 8% year-on-year growth in subscribers, as the industry had 173.28 million users in February 2019. The NCC statistics also showed that internet users grew by 15% from 11,725 in February this year. The industry statistics showed that the telcos gained 1.4 million new subscribers in 1 month, as the industry had recorded 185.74 million GSM users in the month of January. That was the business segment of the news. To come up on foreign segments, Europe marks VE Day's 75th anniversary amid coronavirus lockdown. Up next is the world today. Thanks for being there. Europe marks VE Day with low-key ceremonies as much of the continent remains under coronavirus lockdown. Details in this package.
Leaders across Europe are marking the 75th anniversary of VE Day with low-key ceremonies as much of the continent remains under coronavirus lockdown. The UK has held a 2-minute silence to honor the war dead. The leaders of France and Germany, Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel,